नमः शिवाय शिवजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय गुरुजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय शिवजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय गुरुजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय शिवजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय गुरुजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय शिवजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय गुरुजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय शिवजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय गुरुजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय शिवजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय गुरुजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय शिवजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय गुरुजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय शिवजी सदा सहाय ओम नमः शिवाय गुरुजी सदा सहाय
Jai Guruji, Jai Sangat Ji. Guruji steers car 100 km without petrol. These series of satsangs are by Mr. Garewal, a Gurgaon-based businessman. Mr. Garewal, a businessman, happened to be at his father-in-law's place at the Punjab Agricultural University when Guruji arrived there with some devotees. It was late at night and everybody had langar. Mr. Garewal had to take Guruji back to the temple at Jalandhar. Guruji and he started out in a Maruti 800 and had gone some distance when Mr. Garewal realized that there were very little petrol in the car. He was worried. He was quite sure no petrol pump would be open at that time. It was the early 90s, the heyday of terrorism in the state, and people shut shop quite early. Mr. Garewal also knew that at late night hours both policemen and terrorists prowled the roads. Sitting next to him, Guruji immediately read his mind and told him not to be afraid. Why are you so worried? Mr. Garewal remembers Guruji telling him. We've enough petrol, just keep driving. Mr. Garewal drove on, but he knew the petrol was going to give out sooner rather than later. They had reached Guria midway on the Ludhiana-Jalandhar road since Guruji had spoken. When Mr. Garewal felt doubts forcing their way into his mind again, Guruji responded immediately once again with his reassurance. You're still worried? Keep driving confidently. We have enough petrol. At his words, Mr. Garewal suddenly realized that they had driven 40 kilometers from Ludhiana on an amount of fuel that would not have taken them beyond 4 kilometers. He realized that a divine will was fueling his car, not petrol. Soon they reached the Jalandhar temple without any problems. At the end of the journey, Guruji said, See, I have driven the car without petrol, but be sure to put petrol in the morning. The car will not run without it then. Mr. Garewal says, after this personal experience of the divine force, he surrendered himself to Guruji. He found that Guruji was not an ordinary saint or a pandit. He is far, far above them. He is a Sadguru, true Guru. Another satsang by the same Mr. Garewal. After 80 years, water fills Rajasthan well. There are no limitations to Guruji's grace. His is a power of compassion that towers above all. So it was in Jaipur when lakhs received Guruji's blessings. Guruji Maharaj had gone there in 1994 and stayed with Brigadier, now retired General Mohan Singh for a month. Hundreds would come for his darshan. They came from the desert of the Rajasthan in bullock carts and tangas, and they came with their worries and problems. Through a glance of a benediction given through the means of a copper tumbler, Guruji would heal them. His devotees, Mr. Garewal, being one of them, would act as interpreters for the people. He remembers how once the members of a panchayat approached Guruji with a peculiar problem. The community well had been dry for 80 years. Could Guruji get it to fill with water? 3 days later, the answer was a very loud yes. Through the streets of Jaipur, the villagers came as a party, making noisy celebrations with drums along the way and chanting, Guru Baba, the water has come. Guruji advised the exhilarated villagers never to sell the water. Others who came to him were similarly relieved, whether they were plagued by disease or agitated by mental conflict or family strife. It was not only the commoners who were blessed. When Maharaja and Major Bhavani Singh came, he was carried up to Guruji by 4 people. A few days later, he was healthy enough to walk around. Diamonds and petals out of thin air. Sometimes it is just the heartfelt desire of a devotee that gets Guruji, the embodiment of Lord Shiva, who is famed as the easily pleased Ashutosh, to respond. So it happened with Mr. Garewal's wife, Mrs. Rimple. Guruji was with the Sangat in district Sangrur, Punjab. He asked Mrs. Rimple to come before him and materialized two beautiful diamond studs and placed them on her hands. The Guruji's present was in gift wrapped in English pound. 12 years after they were gifted to his wife, they still retain a rosy fragrance typical of Guruji's presence. At other times, Guruji gives specially needed blessings. New Year's Eve was being celebrated by the Sangat at the residence of Mr. Garewal's father-in-law. Suddenly, a shower of petals came forth from air and continued falling on his father-in-law for a couple of minutes. Another 10 minutes later, a lady devotee, Mrs. Bardhan, was similarly blessed. The miracles showed the Guruji's love for his disciples. For as Mr. Garewal says, Guruji needs nothing from you. In fact, he takes your misery causing karma upon himself to relieve you of suffering. All he wants is your love and faith. The next series of satsangs are by Harsharan Singh, Toor. मेरा मुझ में कुछ नहीं जो कुछ है सो तेरा I own nothing that is mine, everything is yours. I dedicate this tuk from the Sri Guru Granth Sahib to my Guruji for taking us under his Sharan protection and transforming our lives forever. Till we met Guruji, my family and I were just letting our lives drift by, without any sense of purpose or any understanding of the true will of God. Our son had lost his hearing 25 years ago. No medicines affected him, and even saints and tantrics were unable to help us. Then, as they say, when the student is ready, the master appears. And so it was. Suddenly, through a relative, Guruji entered our lives. My son gets his hearing back. The first time my family and I met Guruji, he told my wife the exact amount of fixed deposits that I had, the total number of saris she had. She was fond of good South Indian saris. The, the tolas of gold she had, and the selling price of my house. I had not even disclosed the last to her, fully knowing ladies and being wary of their love for diamonds. This was a small incident, but it had me thinking. Then, when I heard satsangs, the urge to meet him grew. Subsequently, I told him about my son's problem. Guruji at once blessed my son and asked me to put a drop of badam rogan, an Ayurvedic formulation, in his ear every day. After 10 days, my son had a severe earache. When I told Guruji about it, he said, Kalyan, 20% cured, and thereafter he will be gradually cured. He asked me to get an odometry test done. You can imagine my joy when my son removed the headphone and said, the noise is too loud. Though Guruji's kripa, after a period of 25 years, my son could hear again. At this point, I realized how futile my search had been. Here at Guruji's charan, I got everything with his grace, his meher, his kripa, and finally I had found my true Guru, my master, my Rab, my God. Reading the tea leaves. As we came to Guruji, we heard lots of satsangs. Devotees would narrate different incidents regarding the experiences about and with Guruji, describing how they saw him in different forms and sizes. My wife always harbored the desire to be blessed by Guruji the same way, never realizing that her wish would be fulfilled speedily. New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve was approaching, and we were to go to Guruji's mandir. At the last moment, friends persuaded us to celebrate the occasion with them instead. However, Guruji wished it otherwise. My wife was preparing the usual morning cup of tea that day. She had put the tea leaves in the water when she noticed that the residue took the shape of a hooded snake. Thinking it was a coincidence, she dipped the leaves in repeatedly. Each time the leaves arranged themselves into the shape of a hooded snake. It scared her. She called me and I told her that the leaves portended that Guruji wanted us to be with him on New Year's Eve. But it was not just that. It was a blessing in disguise. Guruji cured my wife's 25-year-old backache by making her dance during the Sangat in New Year's Eve. An atheist gets a shock on the road. A few years ago, a friend and I were on our way in my vehicle to my farm. My friend was an atheist. He found the Shabad Kirtan being played over the car stereo boring, and talks of Guruji and spirituality rubbish. He said he would believe in gurus if he saw a miracle take place before his eyes. Hardly had he said this that a truck hit us from the rear. We were thrown out. We were half conscious on the highway and the car was badly damaged. You can imagine our surprise when we regained consciousness and found that neither of us were hurt. My friend was still looking dazed when he got up, and I told him, "This, my friend, is the miracle you were looking for. If you had not been speaking about Guruji, there was no way we would have survived the crash on the national highway, and that too without injury." My friend had a dramatic change. With tears in his eyes, he raised his hands and said, "Thank you, Guruji." When I told Guruji of this incident, he simply said, "No harm could come to you. I was there watching over you." Another incident comes to mind. The greatest gift God can give you is a child. This is exactly what happened in my niece's case. Despite doctors' best efforts, she had been childless for the last 7 years, and there was no hope that she would ever give birth. When my niece came to India, she met Guruji for the first time. Before she could tell Guruji about her desire, Guruji said, "Beti, your work will be done in October." None of us understood what he meant. It was May, and my niece returned to the United States. By Guruji's grace, she was pregnant in October, and the doctors were amazed. She was blessed with a lovely boy. All children given by Guruji are selective souls. Besides being intelligent, they are an asset to their parents. The samosa cure for the heart. Once my heartbeat had gone up to 180 beats per minute. The doctors advised immediate surgery. I thought that I had better inform Guruji before going in for the surgery. I met the doctor concerned in the morning and fixed up the appointment. Then in the evening, I went to my Guru's mandir. He already knew what was troubling me and sent a message through another devotee that nothing was wrong and all would be well. Guruji then distributed prasad that evening. A devotee had bought some samosas. Guruji crushed 5 samosas in his hand and told me to eat them. I was amazed at this, since fried stuff was poison for me. Having faith in my Guru, I humbly ate them, came back and sat down. He called me again and gave 2 more samosas. I was absolutely stuffed, but I managed to eat them. Lo and behold, my heartbeat was restored to 80 beats per minute by his grace. The next day, doctors gave me a clean chit. No surgery was required. Such is my Guru's greatness and his love for me. Leukemia turns into a granular problem. A wonderful miracle took place when Guruji transmuted my nephew's disease. My sister's son had come on a holiday to Delhi and had been suffering from an irritating cough and fever for the last few days. This lasted for a long time, and my sister Ruby, who is a doctor, gave him some medicines, but to no avail. Ultimately, she got some tests done, and they confirmed my nephew was suffering from leukemia. Only one doctor asked my sister to wait for other results to come in. My sister was frantic with worry. She prayed to Guruji to help her child. In the meantime, I came down to Delhi and met Guruji. He asked me, "Is Ruby happy?" I could not understand why he was asking this, so I replied, "Yes, Guruji, she must be happy." Later, I rang up my sister and told her about what Guruji had said. All she said was that she would accompany us to Guruji's place the next day. On the way, she told us what had happened, how she had prayed, and how the last test confirmed that my nephew just had a glandular problem and not leukemia. When we went to bow before Guruji, he said, "Ruby, I have converted your son's disease." You can imagine our surprise since no one knew of this. Such is my Guru, who takes on all our troubles, our worries. One just thinks of him and he's there. Granting vision to a vegetable vendor. A dear friend and a guide of mine bought some land, but to his dismay, he found there was no water beneath the subsoil. He took the problem to Guruji, who told him to dig a particular corner to a depth of 120 feet. He was warned that if he sold the water, the well would dry up. He went and did exactly as Guruji had told him, and clear water started flowing. The course of this subsoil underground water had been changed after 100 years. Is any other proof required to realize that Guruji is God? Guruji is there for anyone who comes to him in need with full faith, trust, and total surrender. There was a poor vegetable vendor in Sector 22, Chandigarh, who had double vision. Doctors confirmed he was suffering from a brain tumor affecting his vision. He was operated upon, but after 6 months the tumor again surfaced, and he went under the knife once more. The tumor was malignant, and the vendor went into a coma for 3 months. When he regained consciousness, the doctor told him there was nothing more that they could do for him, so his mother took him home. She heard about Guruji and implored him to help her son. Guruji told her to take 10 peanuts and soak them in water before sunset. Before sunrise, the kernel had to be eaten and the shell put on the ice for a few minutes. The remedy was to be taken for 10 days. The man regained his eyesight. The malignancy vanished. And till date, he is hale and hearty. This is due to Guruji's kripa. I can spend hours writing this satsang about the miracles Guruji has performed. I can sing his praises all day because for me, he's God who is there for me, my family, and the Sangat, always smiling and covering us with his protective mantle. Is there any heaven on earth? It is, if there is any heaven on earth, it is but here, here, and here. The next satsang is by Dr. Inder Mohan Bhatia at AIMS. Man of medicine bows to faith. Doctor Inder Mohan Bhatia was born into a well-to-do business family of Punjab. His father, elected mayor of the Amritsar Municipal Corporation a record number of times, had a passion for serving the downtrodden, which his son inherited. It influenced his decision to study medicine, and he successfully graduated from the Government Medical College in Amritsar in 1962. 4 years later, a young man of 30 years, he had done his Master of Surgery from AIMS. His specialty was in dealing with ocular trauma, and he rose to head the study of that discipline in AIMS. The doctor naturally imbibed a strong scientific background and an utter faith in the existence of its immutable laws. Then, in a year 2002, something happened to effect a sea change. He went to see Guruji along with his daughter-in-law. He recounts the experience in his own words as below. We were total strangers. Tea was served to all. I accepted the same, but she, the daughter-in-law, refused. Guruji saw this and immediately said, "This is not tea, but your medicine. You will be blessed with a son, and that's why you've come to me." My daughter-in-law had been married for the last 4 years, and the best specialists had already told us that it would be very difficult, if not impossible, for her to conceive. This had upset her. Here, we were taken aback as nobody knew about her problem. After 1 month, she conceived and was blessed with a beautiful son. All my doctor friends who knew about her problem told me that this was indeed a miracle. The doctor's faith in the hitherto fixed laws of science was shaken. He says it was very hard for him to accept and rationalize phenomenon that had happened to witness in the presence of Guruji. He was recovering from an overdose of scientific rationalism when another instance of Guruji's divine intercession occurred. His daughter-in-law's grandmother, a 70-year-old lady who was severely diabetic, developed an acute backache, and paralysis was attacking her lower legs. She could not move about easily. She was examined by the cream of Ames's neurologists. They took a battery of tests, including an MRI, and advised immediate surgery to save her from complete paralysis. The date of the surgery had been fixed. When I brought her to Guruji, the doctor recounts, before leaving, I asked Guruji to bless her so that the surgery would be successful. He looked at me and said very bluntly, "What sort of surgery?" He pointed out that she had already taken prasad and that she would be okay now. So we postponed surgery and she started recovering. In a few weeks, she was perfectly normal. Dr. Bhatia says that over the years, he has seen many more amazing cures. Severe cardiac problems as well as malignancies have been cured due to Guruji's grace. Miracles happen even without bringing problems to Guruji's notice. But Dr. Bhatia believes that for Guruji to help anyone, one must have